Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to another edition of the Black Table Talk, where we address issues. We interview men and women who have things to share with the community that will uplift us and strengthen us. And today we have a very special guest, and I allow him to say his name.
Hi, I'm Jabari Zakiya.
Jabari, how you been today?
I'm good. It's a nice day.
Yeah, you look well.
Well, that's opinionated.
Looks like you ready to drop some jewels on our Black Table Talk.
Always, always.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, we're gonna dive right into it if you don't mind. So, can you start by telling us a little bit about your background and who you are?
Um, I'm a native Washingtonian. I was born in D.C. in a hospital that no longer exists, Garfield Memorial. I grew up in Northeast and went to all public schools, John Burroughs Elementary, Taft, Junior High, and graduated from McKinley in 1973. Then I went to Cornell University in Ithaca. I got a bachelor's in electrical engineering. Then I went to, in 77, then I went to Georgia Tech and got my master's in electrical engineering. And 78, then I went to work for NASA up in Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenville. I worked there 15 years until 1994.
NASA, huh?
Yeah,
Well, all right.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, what led you to your incarceration?
Well, in the mid 80s, I read this book, How Anyone Can Stop Paying Income Taxes. And I was intrigued and I started investigating it. And basically, I found out that the implementation of the income tax system is unconstitutional. But then also I learned that for people in D.C. particularly, we shouldn't be paying income taxes because we don't have any statehood, which means we have no representation in Congress. But also I learned that we're the only non-territorial citizens that are told we have to pay income taxes. And what I mean by that is people who are living in the U.S. Virgin Islands, Guam, American Samoa, they are American territories. And the citizens and the people who live in those territories are American citizens. They have American passports, etc. And in fact, those territories have non-voting delegates in Congress, just like Ellen Holmes Norton is for D.C., but they don't have to file or pay federal income taxes. And I said to myself, well, then why are D.C. residents allegedly required to pay federal income taxes when we have no federal representation? So I started holding seminars in D.C. in libraries for free, teaching people these things. And I got on the radar of the federal government who didn't want me to teach these things. Now, I'm a NASA federal employee, and actually I was holding seminars at NASA, too, on lunchtime, telling people, not just telling people, but showing people the case law, the Supreme Court case law, all the regulations and things like that. And so they came after me and charged me with offenses that were legally impossible for me to be charged with. They charged me with tax evasion, one count, because I stopped filing income tax returns in 1984. So they charged me with tax evasion, which was legally impossible because before they can charge you with tax evasion, you have to have filed a tax return because that's the only way they could determine if you owed any tax. Because there's millions of people, obviously, who don't file tax returns. Children don't file tax returns. Certain, all kinds of statuses of people who don't file tax returns. So the fact that you don't file tax returns means nothing unless they can prove that there was an outstanding tax liability that you didn't pay, and that that tax liability was created through some means of fraud. Well, they could never prove any of this stuff, but that wasn't the point. The point was to get me out of circulation for teaching people this stuff. So anyway, I went into prison. I was living in Maryland at the time, and I was tried in U.S. District Court in Baltimore. and the prosecutor and the judge acted as co-prosecutors. It was a 2-week trial. That's a whole movie by itself. I mean, literally, that's a whole movie by itself. Everybody who was there says they didn't prove anything. It was, like we were talking before, they can put black people in prison, and you don't even have to be anywhere near the crime, and they'll get a jury to convict you because the government says so. But anyway, so I went into prison in January 5th, 1995. I had a 16-month sentence. A 16-month sentence on the first charge when they couldn't even state how much I owed because there was no tax return to state there was any claim tax liability or unclaimed tax liability. And then the day before I was supposed to release, in February, they took me into release and said, you have this $25,000 fine, which was the maximum under the statute. Nobody gets a $25,000 fine for a first release. So, but again, this was a political trial. They had to get me off the streets because I'm really good at explaining the Constitution and the law. And they said that they wouldn't release me and they would hold me indefinitely until I signed this piece of paper saying that I would agree to a payment schedule after I got released for this $25,000 fine. And I literally said, well, I didn't sign any paper. I didn't sign any damn piece of paper to come into prison, and I'll be damned if I sign a piece of paper to get out of prison. So they held me indefinitely, and it took me 3 years to get out on a habeas corpus.
Wow.
So I was supposed to be released February 1st, 1995. I didn't get out until May 5th, 1999, when I was ordered release by the U.S. District Court in Virginia because I had been transferred from West Virginia, Morgantown. I was in the minimum security FCI at Morgantown, no fence, and I was transferred to Petersburg, Petersburg, Virginia, from West Virginia in 1998 because the warden, they got a new warden there, and they said, get him off my campus. because I had no sentence, right? I had no sentence. And if something happened to me, physically or otherwise, he knew, he was one of the few people who had any sentence that they would be all up for liability. Why are you holding this guy and his sentence is over? So that's my, and like I said, there's all kinds of stories I got about my incarceration. So basically, I was a political prison. I went in with a 16-month sentence, and I left 4 years and 2 months later.
So during those 4 months and 2 years, what type of challenges did you encounter and endure?
Well, the hardest thing on my case was seeing people who had longer sentences leave before I left, right? But I understood what I was doing was fighting a battle that's part of a war of oppression. And I was particularly situated mentally and otherwise to be willing to fight the battle to its end so that I'm going to win. So people kept saying, why don't you just sign the piece of paper and leave and you can sue them when you get out? I says, no, that's not how it works. Then I still have to do all the work. So when I eventually won my habeas corpus and they were ordered to immediately release me, I set case precedent, which is still being used. And eventually I got that statute changed that they claimed they had the authority to hold me indefinitely under. So I always knew, because I grew up in the 60s, through the Panther era, through all the assassinations of Medgar Evers, King, Kennedy, both Kennedys, John F. and Bobby Kennedy, I knew politically this was a corrupt, authoritarian, corporately controlled country, and that black people and other people would only get any sense of freedom and autonomy and justice if we stop going along with the system. It can only exist because we go along with it.
Man. So what type of positive experiences or personal growth did you go through during your, through the challenges, while you was incarcerated? Because I know if you experienced some challenges, then you had to experience some personal growth and things at the same time.
Well, like most people who probably have gone through incarceration, you at some point understand that the time period you're in prison is your life.
True.
Because if you start thinking about all the things that you used to do and no longer could, that's why around holidays, Christmas and so forth, that's the most stressful times in prison.
Yep.
Because people remember what they used to be doing around those time period, which they no longer could do. And that's when it's most stressful in every prison around there. That's when you have the most stuff happening because people long to not be in these situations because they're missing out on all these things. So you have those normal things. But in my case, I was lucky in the sense that because I worked for NASA and I had a friend outside, he would send me books, technical books, and I was still doing my technical stuff. I was writing programs. I didn't have any computers, but I wrote the programs and stuff. So when I came out, me and this other brother who was a co-worker with me at NASA, we started a company based on some of the intellectual property that I had developed in prison.
All right. Yeah, you definitely made the best of that.
Well, and like many people know, the one thing that you got in prison is time. And Morgantown had a very good law library. This is in the times when they actually had books in a law library where you could go and actually read. And I basically got a degree in law because I read all the as many of the law books as I could and many of the case precedent books. And just I started looking at how the courts actually ruled on different statutes, not what they tell you in law school, but what the actual case precedent looks like. And so I started doing other people's cases, and I helped get some other people out of prison, which made me really feel good. So at a certain point, I said to myself, well, this isn't the place that I had planned to be at this time of my life and my age, but it's the place that I am, so I might as well make the best use of it.
That's right.
Because a lot of people weren't going to be on the planet for that time period, no matter where they are. So you just kind of roll with the karma, which keeps you kind of centered and keeps you sane because there's a lot of insanity in prison. Just from the regular bureaucracy and the BS, and you get counted every 3 or 4 times a day and just that kind of stupidity is like, you have to have something outside of that routine to make you still feel human, to make you still feel like you have a purpose.
You're right about that. You're definitely right about that. So what about coming home? What was that process like? The feeling of all of a sudden, okay, I'm in too long,
right? And
then the time comes.
Well, for me, again, my sentence, I got released on May 5th, 1999. My sentence has long been over in 1995. So I finally got an attorney to take my habeas corpus to the district court in Virginia once I got transferred to Petersburg, which was the best thing that happened because I had been filing habeas corpus, and it's been filed, and also a civil suit, and they had been following me around the prison system because the BOP, I get one place and they transfer me, and then all the case filings have to follow me to the jurisdiction that I'm now located in. So when I got to Petersburg in '98, which is medium security prison, which legally they had no authority to even house me in because my offense was minimum security. So they were breaking all kinds of rules and regulations. I was lucky to have my case go to the Eastern District of Virginia, and the first time the case was looked at, they dismissed it because I was pro se. Then I got this attorney who was a friend in D.C., and he got another attorney who was in Virginia, and they filed literally the same habeas corpus. And it got to this judge, Leona Brinkema, who basically granted it. But I'm waiting because my attorney says she's going to grant it, she's going to grant it. And I had to wait like 2 months from when I was told, oh, she's going to grant it, she's going to grant it. But they waited to the 3-year anniversary date of the end of what would have been my supervised release before issuing the order. Because, not to get into details, because they or she didn't want to deal with the issue of supervised release because supervised release doesn't take effect until after you're released from prison.
Right.
But they never released me from prison. See, these were all the things that I was claiming. Well, they can't hold me because the sentence was over, and they claiming they're holding me on supervised release, but supervised release doesn't take effect until after you are actually released from prison. So you got all these contradictions, conundrums. So she said, I'm not going to deal with this, and I'll just wait till the end of the period. And then she said, well, he has maxed out what could have been his supervised release, and da-da-da-da-da. So those were the most stressful days, really, because I didn't know what was going on. And I only knew, and this was really funny, I only knew when I was going to be released. I was in the bunk. My name was called on the, PA system, da-da-da, report to the office. And so I went down and I said, what's this up now? Everybody's looking at me like, what did you do this? What did you do this time? So I get into this is funny. This is why this needs to be a movie. I'm getting into the office. Now this is everybody in the office is black, the administrator. So my case manager, who's a black guy named Sam. Oh, I would put Sam Jackson as his playing his part. When I walk into the office, all the sisters who were in there were smiling. I'm like, what's going on? I mean, literally, I walk in the door and they smiling. There's like 2 or 3 other sisters in there. But my case manager, Sam, he was like stone-faced. So I'm like, what's up? We just got the order from the district court that they've ruled that you are to be immediately released.
Threw you off with that one.
And I'm like, I started smiling, and the sisters just broke out their grins. I mean, it's right out of a movie. And so I go get your stuff and da-da-da-da, and whatever. So that whole thing was a movie. So that was, up until that point, that was really the most stressful time because up until then, I'm just treading water. I'm just like everyone, okay, this day, and I'm not thinking about ever being released, right? I'm going to live through this day. I'm going to live through the next day. I'm living through the next day. But when my attorney said that you're going to be released, now I have an expectation that I'm going to get out, but I didn't know when.
What about reentry plan? Because you knew you was getting out one day.
My reentry plan was, they gave me a ticket and I think $35. So I took a bus ride from Petersburg, Virginia to D.C. because I had a cousin who basically said, you can stay with me once you get in. And she was helping with my affairs, kind of like it's my power of attorney kind of thing. So I stayed with her like for 3 months. Then I moved to another place, and then I moved. Now I don't have no job, stuff like that. And um, I eventually got on the national board of the Pacifica National Radio organization and became the treasurer of the of the organization for 3 years, from 2000 to 2003. So I just got back into the flow of it. So I just got back into the flow because, like I say, I was corresponding with people while I was in prison. I was obviously keeping abreast with the news and stuff like that. So the hardest part is just the mechanics. Getting your driver's license, renewing your driver's license, all that kind of stuff. IDs and I had to get my passport renewed. Just all that kind of mechanical stuff is the first thing you have to deal with.
That's a headache too. I mean, we know we got to do it, but it's like, man, come on, man. It's like tedious.
Right. And obviously apply for this, apply for that. You can't do this. So
what about connecting back with your family and friends? What was that like?
Well, actually, probably maybe this is more stressful. My father died in '96 after I was supposed to be released. They first said they would allow me to go to the funeral. And I kept saying to myself, they're never going to let me off this campus. Because if something happened to me or I decided not to come back, what are they going to do? So the day before the funeral, they told me, you're not going. And even though I had predicted in my mind they weren't going to let me go, even though they initially said they would, that maybe was the most disheartening day of the whole time.
I bet, man. I mean, losing a parent.
Yeah. So, but I had two brothers, and I wasn't really close to my family. My mother came a couple of times, but she was older, and just to come up to the prison, take the time. So she would visit, because I had a relatively short sentence, 16 months. I would have been out in 14 months with a good time. But then I spent over twice as much time in prison without a sentence than my prison sentence.
That's right.
Right. So people didn't know how to respond to that. And I told them, don't come. It would just be too stressful. It'd just be too stressful. Just don't come.
So how did you bounce back, and rebuild your life, after?
Well, again, because I had kept in touch with my partner from NASA, and I was doing stuff technically. I was writing programs. I was reading stuff. I came back, and me and my partner, we started a company, Third Eye Technology, to try to sell some of this intellectual property that I had designed while in prison. And actually it works. We got it to work, but then the dot-com bust of the early 2000s hit. We couldn't get any funding. So then I started, and I had been starting anyway. I was tutoring math. And tutoring math, and actually I taught a couple stints in charter schools in D.C., math. So though the tutoring was actually my primary source of revenue, because I could control it. And back then, this is like 2010, 11, I could control it, and it was the best source because I didn't have to go through the bureaucracy and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Going through the school system I learned that I don't want to be in the school system because it was not about learning. It was about warehousing people, and I wasn't going to be a part of that. So with tutoring, though, you can pick your clients, and get paid.
Yeah. And so, what would you say your biggest victory was in coming home?
Well, it depends on which area of my life. Eventually, when Obama got elected and president, and the Democrats took control over the House, I went up on Capitol Hill and talked to the House Judiciary Committee, two lawyers who were under actually John Conyan's office, and I got the statute changed that the government had used or claimed to use to say that they could hold me indefinitely. So I got them to change the statute. That was a big silent victory, and because I couldn't get the ACLU, I couldn't get anybody to look at it. But I said, I don't need you. I know how the process works.
That's right.
And I just worked the process. And so I met with these two brothers who were on Conya's staff, who were the main attorneys in the House Judiciary Committee, because whoever controls the House controls the committees. And I went physically up there and I said, look, and I showed them the case, the Brinkema case, and they said, they did this? I said, yeah. And they were shaking their heads and they were asking me, how did you do that? I said, look, it's a long story. I just want you to change this line in this statute and put it in an appropriations bill. And nobody will look at it. And that's what they did.
Wow.
And they called me when the bill got passed. One of the attorneys, he was laughing. He said, Mr. Zakiya, we named that amendment there. I said, no, don't even go there. He said, don't put my name nowhere close to that amendment. And that's how you get stuff done in Congress. Put in an appropriations bill. Nobody looks at it. Nobody reads the whole thing. Those bills are thousands of pages long.
Wow, I ain't know that.
Yeah. But see, I knew that. So I knew how, at least in this case, I knew the mechanics of what to do to get what I wanted, and I got what I wanted.
So after doing all this, you coming home, and you doing what needs to be done, and also what you want to do. Was there anything that was like after release that was legally binding or financially binding?
Here's another good story. You're making me think of this. I've long forgotten this stuff. Okay, when I was released, remember I said they ordered me released on the day that would have been the last day of supervised release, if I had been released when I was supposed to be released. So when I was released, and this is what Brinkema didn't want to deal with, the BOP said I still had to serve supervised release. And they gave me a PO, right? Mm-hmm. Again, this is luck. This is fate, karma, whatever. And she was a nice, young white woman, right? And I told the nice young white woman, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not on supervised release. I did 3 years in prison, so that's the equivalent of being returned on supervised release for 3 years. I don't care what you think. I don't care what the court thinks. Now, you got two choices. I'm not going to work. I'm not going to send you reports. You can either violate me and take me in front of my sentencing judge, who failed to rule on my habeas corpus when I first submitted it. He was the first person. Or, and this is what I would urge you to do, write a letter to the judge and saying, because they wanted me to pay this $25,000 that the judge imposed, and said, I find Mrs. Zakiya has no financial means to meet this financial burden, so I recommend you release him off of supervised release. And you know what she did?
Exactly that.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Because that judge did not want to see me again, the sentencing judge, because he had pro-prosecuted my case.
Okay.
See, I would have tore his behind up once I got in front of him, because he was supposed to deal with my habeas corpus because he was the sentencing judge, and he didn't do it. So he violated his judicial authority.
Mm.
So that would have brought all of this stuff in front of his face. His name was J. Frederick Mott, M-O-T-Z. His wife was on the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals also. So there was a conflict of interest there because I'm sending stuff to the Fourth Circuit, and the wife of my sentencing judge was on the Fourth Circuit. So you had all this. They talk about corruption in the Supreme Court. There's corruptions, all kinds of corruptions in the system. But anyway, so when I came out, I got them off my back, and I was under no longer. I still got the letter saying your term of supervised release has been terminated. So I was under no longer any kind of court supervision.
So did you suffer because of all that? Did you suffer any mental or emotional type challenges that you did when you came home?
Oh, definitely. I'm still suffering from it.
Really?
Of course. I mean, I try not to. For as far as active day-to-day distress, I'm way past that. But when I start thinking about all the stuff I missed, I was planning to go to the '96 Olympics because I was supposed to get out in February, and I had gone to Georgia Tech, so I still knew people in Atlanta. I had been planning that. You know, they effectively wiped me out financially.
Mm.
They took all my money from my bank accounts and stuff like that. We had no authority to do it. They just did it. The banks gave it to them. But my whole stance was, look, I came in the world with nothing material. I'm at the point where I don't have as much material stuff, but the thing that they could never take was my mind. They could never take my mind. They could never take my spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm smart enough to get all of that stuff back. And that's, like, again, it's a war. And I took it as a war. I didn't take it personally. I said, okay, this is war. And I'm going to fight. I'm going to engage in war to win. And so I used the tactics in an intelligent way to win. And I'm winning my way.
In this war right now, are you involved in any type of community service type stuff or advocacy?
Oh, like I said, when I came out, I became involved with everything. Like I say, before I went into prison, I was involved with the local station board. They were called in at WPFW radio station, 89.3 FM in D.C. When I came out, I became involved with the radio station then again, and in fact, I was voted onto the National Pacifica Board of Directors, and I was the treasurer for 3 years, from 2000 to 2003. You know, but I'm an alleged tax evader by, I've been treasurer everywhere I went in every organization. I was on my condo board before I was the treasurer of the condo, because everybody's scared of numbers, and I like numbers, and I wasn't afraid of numbers and money. So because I was managing my own money, I had gotten my Series 7 broker's license, so I could buy my own mutual funds. So I was never afraid of that stuff. I like money. In fact, when I was in college, even though I was an engineering major, I took enough courses to have a minor in economics because I always wanted to know about the money. Follow the money, like they say. And that's what I learned how to do.
Follow the money.
Follow the money.
So that sounds like a real good tactic, and you coming home, I mean, you already had a plan. I mean, you just stated what type of plan you had, but it was like, this is like a tactic of war.
Right. So I learned one of the things that I had to come to accept is most black people don't want to fight the war and don't count on black people to have your back.
That's sad.
It is, but it is what it is.
Man, yeah, I mean that hurt when you said that just then.
Because I remember when I was, I don't know, it was 64, so I must have been like 8 or 9, because I turned 9 in the middle of 64. I remember looking at TV, and Malcolm X had come back from Hajj in Africa, and it had to be 64 because I think this was like at the height of the Watts riots, the 64 Watts riots in L.A.
Mm-hmm.
And they asked him, "Are all of these riots? Is this the beginning of the Black Revolution or something like that?" White reporter. He said basically, "No." He said because if black people were to actually really engage in a revolution, one of the first things we'd have to do is probably get rid of 1/3 of our own people. Because he said you don't want to be in a foxhole with somebody. And remember, this is 64, the Vietnam War was going on, and you saw people, coverage of people, black people in Vietnam and foxholes and all this stuff. And so he said, if you don't want to be in a war and be in a foxhole and have to worry about if the person's in the foxhole with you going to shoot you.
Mm. Oh, that's tough right there.
And see, this is, I was born in 55, so I'm looking at all this stuff as a young person. I remember exactly where I was when I heard President John Kennedy got killed in November of 63. And then the completely crazy story the government put out about Lee Harvey Oswald being the only person and all this stuff. I'm like, these white folks are crazy if you can believe that stuff. So then that's 63. Medgar Evers gets killed, shot in his driveway. Then 68, April 4th. I remember that because I was in junior high. That's the day that Dr. King got killed. Mm. A contingent of National Guard was stationed at our junior high that weekend. Okay. That's 68. That's April of 68. 2 months later, January 5th, June 5th, 68, Robert Kennedy gets shot, allegedly by Sirhan, who was standing in the front, but he gets shot in the back, and they claim that only this person did it. And I'm looking at this stuff as a young person, as a preteen, and saying to myself, these white folks will say anything and everything, and the majority of the people will just go along with it. Even though probably the majority of the people don't believe it, but they will act as if they have to go along with it because it raises too many issues that they would have to be willing to change their life to confront. And the hardest thing for people to do is change their comfortable life to meet uncomfortable consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the hardest thing people returning from imprisonment have to deal. Do I go back to the same place and do the same things that got me in the prison, or do I make the scary decisions, because you don't know what all the answers may be.
Of course.
But do I make the scary decisions to do something different and better?
With that said, what do you think needs to be changed with our criminal injustice system for returning citizens?
So I coined a phrase, and I'm glad to hear more people start using it. I don't call it criminal justice system because what we have to do is part of this whole thing is change the language. It's factually a criminal legal system. It is a system of criminal law, and it is a system of criminal procedure. It has nothing to do with justice, or very little to do with justice. Justice is not the primary focus of its outcome. It's control. So one of the things we have to start doing is stop using the oppressor's language. It's not a system of justice. It's a legal system of criminal law, right? The law is criminal on criminal matters, okay?
Okay.
And until we start to understand that, we won't really be able to create something better, because all we're trying to do is to smooth out the edges of something that needs to be eliminated.
So you're saying take away, don't even use the word or criminal.
Don't use the word justice.
Okay, don't just okay.
It's a system of criminal law. That's what it is. They got law. It has to do with criminal activity. And it's a system. You got the judges, the police, the prosecutors, the, the incarceration industry, et cetera, et cetera. It's a system. Mm-hmm. And it's a capitalist system. So what's the primary purpose of any capitalist system? Is to make money for a few white men. Mm-hmm. That's when you look around all the stuff, who's the ultimate recipient of the money? A small group of white men who own and control these corporations or have stock in them.
How does that make you feel? I mean, are you? And I know you said you're fighting a war, but are you bitter during the war? Are you how you feel?
I feel all right because like with any war, it's in a sense I don't take it personally, right? They don't know who I'm at. They just see a black person or a woman or somebody who they don't want to have control. But because I have my own plan, I have my own set of values, I have my own set of goals, that's what I work on every day. They don't control that. Just like the rain. When it rains in the morning, you get up and say it's raining. You got two decisions to make. Do I stay in the house because I don't want to get wet, or do I go out in the weather and just take my precautions because I got stuff to do and the weather's not going to stop me from doing it?
Yeah, that's right.
So that's how I look at it.
Great point.
White people are not going to stop me from doing what I want to do.
Great point. I mean, and then in the rain, what you going to do?
Right, because it's going to rain.
It goes. Let me get my umbrella.
Exactly.
A rain jacket.
Right. You just hope it's not a typhoon that destroys everything and prevents you from doing what you need to do.
So would you say you was I think I know the answer to it, but just for the Black Table Talk, do you feel like you became a better person, better man, a better leader after incarceration?
No. I was the same person that I came out, the same person that went in. I just came out smarter. I just came out more knowledgeable. And I came out, I don't even know if I can say more angry, but I guess I was a little bit more angry. I was actually probably not more angry. I was more determined to change this stuff. And my whole thing is, I think in a way it was karma, fate, or whatever, because I had no idea how bad the stuff was before I went in. And I said, I got a 4-year degree in the criminal legal system. Paid for by the government, which I will use against the government.
That's right. And what about any misconceptions about men and women who done time now as returning citizens? They coming back home. What type of?
Well, like I said, when I was in prison, I was helping people, some people, with their legal work. One lesson I learned, I still remember this. This was a young guy. I was in Morgantown, and when I was in Morgantown, so many people from D.C. went to Morgantown. But also a lot of people from Ohio seemed to be in Morgantown. And a lot of these brothers, probably 60 to 70% of the population, I don't know what the exact number was at the time, were under 25. Okay, this is the middle of the 90s. They were almost, I think, 80% of that, 70% of black people there under 25 for nonviolent drug possessions, right, with these drug laws, minimum mandatories and 5-year minimums. And I realized these brothers have no clue on why they're in prison.
Wow.
They expected to go to prison. They're not angry about going to prison. People in their circle expected to go to prison. It was just a thing. And I remember helping one brother, and I told him, meet me at the law library, because you need to give me some stamps so I can mail this stuff, and you need to give me some other information on your case. He never showed up. I went and found him at the gym playing basketball. I said, man, you're supposed to come to the law library. Well, I said, and at that moment I said, I have to stop caring about other people's lives more than they care about their own lives. So at that point, I stopped working with people who were not going to put in at least the same amount of energy and time into their own legal work that I was willing to do for free.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because if you're not willing to follow, because once you file the stuff, that's just the first thing. You got to respond. You got to do all this stuff. And if they weren't going to do it, it's like, I can't help them. I won't help them because I only have a finite amount of time and energy and emotional, resources to expend.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll expend it on people who want to fight. I'm not going to expend it on people who don't want to fight. And so you have to do triage. Everybody ain't going to make it.
Right.
Everybody's not going to make it. So I'm going to focus on the people who are at least going to act like they're going to try to make it.
I like that term, how you use that triage. That's exactly what it is.
It is.
Yeah.
You got to make a decision. Is this one treatable? Is this one treatable? That one ain't treatable. So why, you don't wait you only have a finite amount of everything, right?
Right.
So you have to manage your scarce resources, all of them.
So what about your hopes and aspirations, for out here, for advocacy work,
Like I say, I'm still in a lot of stuff like Green Party and Diversity Fund. I got on, worked with Empower DC, One DC. I'm in a lot of these different organizations. And again, my stance, my viewpoint is this is a war. You don't play nice in wars. I'm not trying to make friends.
Right.
I'd rather you fear me than like me. Right? If it comes down, if those are the two choices, then fear me. Because if you like me, but you're not willing to fight, then I don't need you. Because when I'm in the foxhole, if you're going to be in the foxhole, then you got to fight in the same direction I'm fighting. Right?
That's right.
All right. So again, I'm a lot smarter now. I don't try to engage in things that I don't think will be fruitful. I manage my time, energy, and I'm saying emotional energy and every other type of energy. I try to assess, is the use of this energy going to create an outcome that is going to help win the war? And basically, that's how I think about it. Because you can't win the war if you're continually wounded, engaging in activities that deplete you.
Right.
Right? So that's, which by definition kind of, I basically spend a lot of time by myself. And in fact, I always did. As a child, I spent a lot of time by myself because most people weren't interested in the things that I was interested in. Mm-hmm. And, you make a decision. Okay. They're into that. I'm into this. Okay. That just means I either find who's interested in what I'm interested in or just stay by myself, which is a good stance to take. And a lot of other people should actually learn how to do that, because you don't need people in your life that creates chaos.
Right about that.
Right? You don't need to voluntarily bring people into your life or be around people who create chaos
Mm.
and confusion and discord and all that kind of stuff. Which is one of the reasons I've been able to stay this long, and it's one of the reasons I was able to get through prison the way I was, because because those young guys, they would look at you and talk to you, and I would mostly just listen to what they say, but they always knew I was going to the law library, and they would ask me questions, and I would say, well, da 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 da, and some of them were interested enough to pursue it, and those were the ones I would work with, and other ones were like, okay, like you say, you have to triage.
Back to the triage.
Triage.
What about this book? When you gonna finish this book? Cause you by yourself, you know what I mean?
Okay. So the biggest smiling, nice thing that I'm doing right now in my life, I'm writing this book. It's a math book. Since 2008, I developed some math around prime numbers, and I've gotten one paper published in August this year, 2023, and I've submitted two more for publication. We'll see what happens with those, but I've created this field of math that's a new way of doing math in number theory that I'm trying to get promoted. And I've posted my papers on all these forums, and you get these snarky remarks from a lot of these white guys because they don't read the papers, and because they see my name, look at my profile. But more and more people are looking at my stuff, and I get all these hits. I have a website, and most of the people that respond to the website are from overseas. In fact, the journal that I just got published, this one paper in, most of the reviewers, I looked at the people in the journal, they're from overseas. So Americans see my name, Jabari Zakiya, and they know I ain't white. And so right over there, they don't give a lot of respect. But the ones who read the paper say, "Oh, okay, this is some stuff."
Mm.
So the good thing about math, this is why I like engineering. They don't have to like you, they don't have to respect you, but if they can't refute your math, if they can't refute your programming, it don't matter. And that's why I went into engineering, because not only because I was good at math and like math and other stuff, it's one of the few areas where your work speaks for itself. And that's what got me through NASA. I was political. I was in Blacks in Government organization there. I was in the union there. I was outspoken, and everybody in management knew that, but they could not mess with my work. They knew my work. They could not mess with the work. So I could say whatever I wanted to. I could come in whenever I wanted to. People knew to just leave him alone. Just leave him alone. He'll do what he's supposed to do. He'll meet his work requirements. Just leave him alone. And in fact, I really thank NASA for doing that, because even when I was finally, my conviction was upheld by the Fourth Circuit, and they escorted me out of work that day off the premises, the guards and everything, they had a sad look. Mm. Because I didn't cause any problems. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I was not a problem. They knew I was political. They knew, but I never disrespected people. I didn't call people out their names. I could explain my position, but I did my work.
And you're still doing it to this day.
I'm still doing it to this day, and will always do it.
That's right.
Because that's part of my life that gives me joy.
And that's what comes across most successful when you're doing something that you love and it gives you joy.
Right.
That's powerful.
Right. So all the craziness could come, and I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't have. When you don't have something that gives you a little oasis of stability and a little oasis of enjoyment, it's hard to get through life when all these other negative things around you occur and you don't have anything that you can go to or any place you can go to in your head that brings you joy, that makes you smile.
Right. Because the world got enough negativity of its own.
Exactly.
So you got to create some joyful and positive space,
Right.
you know, for well-being.
And joy, like hate or any other thing, it only exists in the mind.
Yep.
It's how you look at things.
Yep.
How you respond to things, right? So, like I said, I could have responded to all that stuff, and you know, because they were trying to destroy me mentally. I said, no, it's a war. And one of the things I always said to myself, if Nelson Mandela can do 27 years in prison, I think I can do a lot less than that.
That's right.
And seriously, so other people have gone through a whole lot more stuff than I did.
Right.
But you got to be willing to go through your stuff. You have to be willing to do your part, to fight to win. Not fight to just exist, but fight to win. Because they're going to make you fight anyway. But they always going to do it from the point of view that you don't think you can win anything.
Mm.
You're just fighting to survive.
Mm.
And you're fighting mostly, first thing you're fighting is yourself. And then you're fighting the closest people around you. You're never fighting, most of us never even think about fighting the people who's causing the problems.
You're right. They make them plain, but they won't fight.
But won't fight. But you fight your wife, your family, your whatever, your boss. But they're just fighting too.
Right. So it's more like an implosion with our people.
Yeah. And they know that. The white man knows that.
Yeah. Sitting back, clapping their hands, smiling.
And so all we really have to do, literally all we really have to do, under conditions of war, the first thing you have to do, besides after you realize you're under conditions of war, stop doing what your enemy wants. That's the first thing you got to do. Stop doing what your enemy wants. If your enemy says go right, you go left.
Right.
Your enemy says go up, you go down. And the enemy says do this, you do that. But you stop giving voluntarily to your enemy what they want from you.
Jabari, great to have you, bro.
All right.
Very great to have you. Appreciate your insight, your passion, your knowledge, man. You know, it's that's needed here at the Black Table Talk. And this ain't the last one.
Okay.
Call you back in.
Well, like I said, yeah, no problem. Like I said, I got time.
Yeah. Well, I hope we got a lot more of it.
Yeah, just tell me when the count starts and I'll be here.
Okay, Black Table Talk, another successful edition. And like we always say, we're going to sign off, but we're never signing out because there's always work to be done. You have a good day.